1937, Nazi Germany. Hitler was in power and anti-Semitism had spread across the country. An art museum in Munich had an exhibit entitled Entartete Kunst, Degenerate Art. The exhibit was a way for the Nazis to frown upon and publicly humiliate Jewish artists and expressionists. It was a Nazi war on culture. Germans from across the country flocked to see the paintings and sculptures that the government deemed as subhuman. The success of this degenerate art exhibit sparked another Nazi act of cultural shaming, the attack on degenerate music. After the success of the Munich Degenerate Art Exhibition in 1937, another exhibition entitled Entartete Musik, or Degenerate Music, was put on display in Dusseldorf in 1938. The poster advertising this exhibition pictured a black saxophone player named Johnny, a character from Ernst Krenek's opera Johnny Strikes Up, and it mutated Johnny into a monkey, picturing him wearing the Star of David. This poster turned the character of Johnny into a symbol of racial and musical inferiority that was used continually throughout Nazi propaganda to demean jazz musicians and Jewish culture. Hans Servus Ziegler opened the Degenerate Music exhibit by saying, "What has been collected in this exhibition represents an effigy of wickedness, an effigy of arrogant Jewish impudence and complete spiritual insipidness." On the walls of the exhibit, the faces of Jewish composers like Emmerich Kallmann and Leo Fall were shown obscured and deformed. Visitors would also be able to go inside booths and listen to the corruptive sounds of jazz and swing music, which were believed to imitate the sounds of monkeys and primitive jungle squawks. There were displays that talked about Arnold Schoenberg and Paul Hindemith, accusing them of mocking classical music with their use of dissonance and atonality. Around the same time in Austria, a performing arts society called the AKM was responsible for collecting royalties from performances of music and passing along the funds to composers. The AKM published a book with the names of around 2,000 composers and in red ink marked out the names of those who were Jewish. More than 500 names were slashed through, effectively blacklisting the composers, taking away their royalties and preventing their works from being published. The AKM systematically identified Jews by sending out questionnaires to their roster and asking for their religious and ethnic identifications. Bela Bartok, one of Hungary's most famous pianists and composers, was sent the form and responded by saying, "Our opinion is that such questions are wrong and illegal. We must insist on having nothing to do with it." Although he was not Jewish himself, Bartok stood against the attempt to silence composers based on their backgrounds. As of now, the AKM booklet could be used to identify royalties stolen by the Nazi Party and redistribute them to the composers once identified as degenerate. There are even examples of the Nazi war on music before the exhibition of degenerate music itself. An exchange of letters between Wilhelm Furtwängler and Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda, that took place in 1934 sheds light into the opinions of several German officers about the effect that music has on German culture. Furtwängler, the National Director of Music, was mailing Goebbels to say that several composers should be exempt from the persecution against degenerate music. While Furtwängler still stood against the Jews, he believed that Jewish music was not inherently worse. My feelings in this matter are strictly those of an artist. The function of art and artists is to unite, not to divide. In the final analysis, I recognize only one line of distinction, that between good art and bad. However, when as now, the distinction between Jews and non-Jews is being drawn with relentless, all but doctrinaire stringency, even when the political outlook of the person in question provides no grounds for complaint, that other line of distinction, which is so central to the world of music and in the long run decisive, that between good and bad, is sorely neglected. We must therefore clearly establish that men like Walter, Klemperer, and Reinhardt are able to express themselves artistically now and in the future. Therefore, I repeat, let us fight to combat the rootless, subversive, corrosive, destructive spirit, but not the genuine artist who by his very nature will forever remain creative and therefore constructive, regardless of how his art is viewed. It is not the task of art and the artist to unite. Far more, it is to shape, to lend form, to eliminate what is diseased, and to make way for what is healthy. So as a German politician, I cannot acknowledge only one line of distinction as you suggest, that between good art and bad art. Art must not only be good, it must also emerge from the folk, or better, Only an art that draws inspiration from the whole of the folk itself can, in the final analysis, be deemed good and have meaning for the people for which it was created. Art must be good, but beyond that, it must also have a sense of responsibility, must be professional, must be popular with the folk, and aggressive. I readily concede that art cannot afford any more experiments. The exchange of letters between Furtwängler and Goebbels is direct evidence of the censorship of music during the Nazi era. While Furtwängler pushed for more leniency on the types of music that were allowed, Goebbels insisted on a strict definition of music that excluded anything that did not embody the spirit of the German people. One person that was in the middle of this censorship debate was Igor Stravinsky, the famous Russian composer and conductor. His works were put on a list by the Kulturkampfbund, an organization that tried to suppress the works of Jewish and Bolshevik artists. Accused of having Bolshevik ties, much of his music was filtered out of Germany. However, with help from his German publisher Willy Strecker, several concerts of his music were performed in Nazi Germany. The enormous popularity of his Firebird Suite and his denial of Bolshevik and fascist connections helped his music reach the German public. However, this did not occur without pushback. Willy Strecker advised Stravinsky by saying, "It would be best if you did not undertake anything in Germany without letting me know." The cultural tensions in Germany posed a threat to the progress that Stravinsky was having getting his music to the German public. Eventually, some of Stravinsky's music was placed inside the Dusseldorf Degenerate Music exhibit, accused of having primitive rhythms and atonal qualities. The Degenerate Music exhibit in Dusseldorf is evidence of the German refusal of culture other than their own. The AKM Index, letters between Furtwängler and Goebbels, and the censorship of Stravinsky all show the feeling of cultural superiority that led to the persecution of the Jews, shown directly in the Degenerate Music exhibition. It is important to remember the lasting effects that cultural ignorance can have. Rejection of the art that individuals make is a complete rejection of their culture and their society as a whole. In this exhibit, one can see the cultural self-centeredness that led the Nazis to mass genocide. The exhibit also created a sense of moral superiority in the public that led many Germans to become bystanders or participants in the attack against the Jews. Entartete Musik stands as a testament to the effects of publicly ridiculing and shaming the culture and beliefs of an entire group of people.